Hi again and welcome back to this fourth in a series of videos, A Beginner's Guide to Music Direction in Musical Theatre. So far we've looked at your role as the music director, knowing what's expected of you, choosing a production, some basic conducting technique, marking up your score and the audition process. This time we're going to be looking at what is sometimes known as note bashing rehearsals, the teaching of the music itself and working with individual actors. Don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button below so you can be informed when further videos are released. Ask me any questions also in the comments box below. I want to hear from you and your experiences. Maybe there's something specific that you want me to cover. If so, let me know. Okay, my name is Rob Parrish. Let's make a start. Now, for those of you that don't read music-only rehearsals can be somewhat mundane. I think it's really important, therefore, as much as possible, to keep those rehearsals interesting and, as far as possible, make them fun. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, you can go now. Let me explain. Okay, so I'm not telling you to be making jokes every 15 minutes. But sometimes it may be worth asking how many altos it does take to change a light bulb. Well, none at all, because it's too high. You get my point? That's broken the intensity of what may be referred to as some of the more boring rehearsals. Regardless of keeping your company engaged in what you have to say, you need to be prepared. Make sure for every music rehearsal you thoroughly plan ahead for the number or numbers you're going to be teaching, where the breath points will be, how you're going to conduct it. Note any areas of the score that may cause some diction issues, the phrasing of the music and general interpretation. If you're at the start of the rehearsal process, I would strongly suggest starting with an easy number for your company. That will get a quick result. Keeping the company engaged is vital. One way of keeping the company engaged, I find, is working relatively quickly. Moving from altos to tenor in quick succession keeps your company alert. But before I go any further, I want to make a very important point. And in doing so, I'm going to use some rather crude graphics. Apologies in advance. Okay then, tell me what you see. Now, tell me what you see. And finally, what do you see? I think you may have guessed it. Always be aware to avoid flogging a dead horse. I think this might require some further explanation. If you're well acquainted with the group you are working with, you will know their capabilities. If, however, you're new to this particular group, it won't become apparent until further into the rehearsal process as to whether they will be able to, dare I say it, manage some more complex musical or harmonic passages in the score. 3, 4 or 5 part harmony can be difficult for non-music readers. And if you feel that week after week you're not progressing, you may need to consider cutting your cloth accordingly, as the saying goes. If the sopranos and the altos are working well but the men are low in numbers and struggling with their respective baritone and tenor parts, why not turn the number into altos, sopranos and men? If at the end or indeed the middle of a musical number a top C or higher is required, don't insist on it if you feel your ladies may be struggling. I don't believe there's anything wrong in simplifying parts if it obtains the required result. Don't flog that dead horse. Let's get back to our rehearsal. So, you've established the soprano, alto, tenor, baritone groups, or whichever combination you've decided upon, and they are sitting in front of you eagerly awaiting the first rehearsal of a musical number. I don't want to go into the pros and cons of seating arrangements when learning harmony parts at music rehearsal, but I would like to offer some tips towards helping to support those singers who may struggle more than others. Be mindful that those with lower confidence are likely to sit at the back of a rehearsal. If you've identified such individuals, it's good to encourage them to be seated amongst the stronger members of the company. Of course, many chorus numbers within popular musicals will be well known, but for the numbers that are less well known, and indeed for chorus members new to this work, it's useful to break down the numbers into smaller passages, particularly with part singing. Don't ever rely on company members that have a strong musical ability to sight sing. Ensure that your singers listen to each passage played on the piano, especially the sections likely to cause more difficulty. Get them to listen 2, 3 more times if necessary. Encourage your members to record their harmony lines as well, for learning in the car or the gym or the bath. Ensure that your part singers know their starting note. It may be that the bass note is the same as what the sopranos have just sung, or that their start note is the same as a particular word that was sung a bar earlier. When it comes to pitching intervals, it might be useful to relate the interval to a particular well-known song. A perfect fifth, for instance, being the same as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or a minor second is the same as the first 2 notes in the theme of the film Jaws. Da, 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 da. I've also found that it's a good idea to work each part in no particular order. To help your company stay alert, avoid always starting with the sopranos, then the altos, then the tenors, then the baritones, in that order. Mix things up a bit. Start with the altos, then with the baritones, then with the tenors, then with the altos again, then with the baritones again. Why not keep the sopranos waiting? They think they know the melody anyway, and let's face it, it is the easy part. Oh, I'm going to get into trouble from sopranos now. But I'd even go as far as to suggest you ask the sopranos to sing along with other parts. Not only does it help the musical learning, it stops them from whispering to each other. Apologies to the sopranos again. Don't worry, I'll cut it out in the edit. Gradually try to put different parts together. Let's hear the sopranos with the tenors. We can hear how they sound together. Point out any particular areas of close harmony in the writing and rehearse those parts so that your company knows how that specific section should sound. Let's hear the bass with the altos, and so on and so forth. And of course, finally putting the section together. Give encouragement and tell them when it sounds good. Similarly, when areas are not so good and needs more rehearsal. It's sometimes worth using the floor during music rehearsals. Move the singers around. For those weaker members of the company, it's useful to hear how the rest of the part sounds. Standing each section in circles, for instance, so that they face each other. I found that on many occasions, singing in lines inhibits everyone in the section hearing each other. It's also useful to start mixing the parts together by getting the company to start moving around the rehearsal space, which will mean they start to hear other parts. And of course, don't forget, further rehearsals progress, any music-only rehearsals should include parts without using the book. Trying to get company members, particularly to start to learn their music and lyrics, can sometimes be an ordeal for them. It's important to point out that rehearsals are for rehearsing, but true learning, and by that I mean learning lyrics primarily, can only be done outside of rehearsal time. Rehearsals are for rehearsing, learning is done at home. Before we move on to working with principal actors on a one-to-one basis, some thoughts on rehearsal discipline. Always be punctual, prepared, and start and finish rehearsals on time. It's disrespectful to everyone involved if time is wasted before and at the end of any rehearsal. Working with your principal actors now can be very different. It's useful at the onset of working on any particular number is to explain the context in which the number appears in the production overall. What is the character trying to say? It's also useful to establish what an actor's interpretation of the specific number is. However, does it conflict with yours? Of course, if this is the case, one would need to consider consulting the director of a production to establish exactly how they would require a particular number to be performed. Music directors don't tend to be vocal coaches. Having said that, it is sometimes expected. There are numerous tutorial courses online that are much better equipped to instruct on vocal coaching techniques than I. Having said that, you should be mindful of dynamics and individual vocal delivery, where breaths need to be or do not need to be taken, and of course diction. It's very easy to overlook diction, particularly when performing a well-known and recognised musical number. But always try to be mindful of an audience member hearing the musical number for the first time. Encouragement is sometimes required, particularly with less experienced performers. These individuals may require more one-to-one time than those more experienced members of your company. There's nothing wrong in helping them by explaining where they need to take a breath, and sometimes when working on phrasing when not to take a breath. So that brings us to the end of part 4. We're now into our rehearsal process. In the next video, we're going to be looking in more detail at what needs to be decided early in the production process. We'll look at rehearsal planning and who is required when, and working with your fellow production team members through the rehearsal stages, what to look out for, and to start thinking about how we link all we've learned so far together, what I like to call run-throughs. I hope you'll join me next time.